Good day, viewers. Welcome to AMB Online. We have AJ Hartenberg from T Systems, the portfolio manager for data center services. Welcome, AJ.
Thank you very much, Nathan.
AJ will be taking us through cloud computing solutions for the mining industry. How the mining industry can benefit, can leverage from these solutions.
Cloud computing services enables customers to actually use IT resources in a more cost-effective manner. One of the key things around cloud computing services is that you can provision services as and when you require it. And I think the key message to actually bring back to you is to say, in the days gone by, IT services were always provisioned along a long IT procurement cycle, which means you had to go through various procurement cycles, business cases, to actually attain or get those IT services procured for the organization. So what does cloud computing mean in terms of the mining industry? I think the key message is IT services are always difficult to manage from a provisioning perspective. The message that I want to bring across is that when we provision IT services generically, we always look about procuring physical hardware. When we look at cloud computing services, you can procure those services online as and when you require it. The information still remains within your control, but you are able to now look at solutions such as, how do I get more information out of the ground and provision that and get that information to my business a lot quicker? How can I actually make better decisions and faster decisions in terms of where do I need to go in terms of extracting information, extracting minerals, extracting the resources that I actually need to actually get into and actually turn that around a lot quicker. A lot of decisions are made when people are physically in the ground and they actually go and say, okay, we've been mining this area, but how do you get that information? How do you make use of that information? And what solutions are available? So things like big data provisioned online as and when you require. So you can say, well, I need to be able to extract information. We've mined along this area for the last 6 years. What does that information look like? How much minerals have we extracted out of the ground? What does it mean to us as a business? Is this a more is this the better way to actually do it? Or should we change our strategic direction and go to another area that will give us a better yield of resources and a better yield of minerals out of the ground? And if we look at that, then we say, so what else can be done from an IT perspective? How do you actually take cloud services and actually articulate and get that to be more effective for you as a business? The key question that when we ask that is to say, what solutions can be provided for IT for mining? So we look at mineral extractions, we look at how do we get faster return in terms of information, because at this point in time there's a lot of manual processes that goes into bear in terms of extracting that information. There are a lot of programs out there that can actually locate and geolocate where certain minerals are, and how do you say, instead of mining in a particular area, say, how can we move our mining operations to different areas that gives us the best yield? The rand-dollar exchange rate affects the way the amount of minerals we extract out of the ground. And how does it affect it? It affects it from a perspective of, if the mining operations are stopped at that particular point in time, there is no yield of production. So the question is, how do you make mining more effective in terms of maybe taking that time frame to say, let's locate other areas where we can actually get more minerals and we can extract that. Not only big data, but how do you reduce your consumption of electricity? So things like smart metering. If people are in the ground, how do you get that information from under the ground back up to the surface? How can you detect if there are potential rock falls or potential explosions that may actually affect mining areas and close off affect rockfalls within the mining sector. We know that a lot of miners have been affected by things like accidents that happen, and it's not because of poor information, it's just that the information hasn't come up to the surface quick enough to extrapolate that information out. And I think when we look at cloud services, we say IT resources will give you that information and can be mined, for lack of a better term, can be mined more effectively by using data mining solutions such as big data, business analytics in terms of business intelligence. You can say, how do I take various portable units within business and take that and say, can I extract the information and send that signal back into business and send that information back up into the realm? So instead of actually having people not being available in terms of physical productivity, you can do more now with technologies by taking soil samples and put that information into analytics and actually drive that further. The question is, do you always have the IT resources available to you as a business to be able to do that? And sometimes people will say, yeah, but it will take us 6 months before we can actually get the system to actually take all of this data and actually put it back into that environment. The question is, does mining actually want to spend that kind of money on systems that they're only going to use for a certain period of time? And how does that affect their profits and the cost in the business? So here's the thing is, if you use cloud computing services, you don't have to worry about buying the infrastructure. You can actually take that infrastructure and say, I want to provision it for today, and then I want to be able to give those resources back when I don't need it. And so it means that you're not sitting with the overhead of the physical huge infrastructure that you actually need to mine the data. You can say for short periods of time, in terms of projects, specific projects, that goes along the lines of saying, we need this information for 3 months, and you can procure those services for 3 months and then move on and give those resources back. What does it mean? It means that if you develop new applications, if there's a new way of actually extracting information out of the business, can you get systems that will help you and position that particular product to be able to get that information and see whether this will actually work? Now it means you don't have to go and buy more IT hardware. All you have to do is say, let me get provision services from the cloud for a period of 3 months. And if this yields a greater return in terms of now we can get better information out of the products and services that we're actually using in terms of the various applications or the various ways of actually extracting something. If it takes us 3 months to get information and we find that this is not cost effective, then you can scrap it. You can scrap it immediately and say, okay, let's tackle the next project. What project, which, let's say, application vendor, ISV for mining, has got a new product out there that they're saying that will help us. Then you can go into a proof of concept for a time frame, and then you can say, well, does this work? And if you find it works, then you can carry on. Now you know what size of equipment you actually require, you know for how long you're going to require, and you know what your costs are going to look like over the next 3 to 6 months for that project. Whereas if you had to go the classic route of procuring the hardware, then having to provision the hardware, that period takes already 6 months. Sometimes it takes 6 months, sometimes it takes 3 months, but it depends on your procurement cycle, which is a cost to the business. Whereas cloud computing services, you can spin up within a day or two. You can spin up. If you have connectivity to the internet, you've got connectivity into the service provider's data center, you can spin up those resources within a week, within a day, within an hour, depending on how you're connected to that service provider. So what does it mean? You get a rate of return far quicker because now your time to actually procure that resources is a lot shorter, which means you don't have to wait for 6 months, you don't have to wait for 3 months even to actually get that information. You effectively get that information and start getting that information in return on that within a month, within 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how fast the application is deployed. Is there a value to the mining industry? Of course, because you spend so much money and time and effort on resources, and you can say, guys, we are no longer going that way, we need you to go and mine in that particular area. You can redirect resources to the right areas because you know you're going to get the greater yield there and you're going to get the best return on investment. Because it's all about how much soil you extract out of the ground and how you can turn that around. So how does that affect your processing in terms of, going through the various, processing of, extracting that information? You can potentially develop new processes. What does it mean? It means that you can shorten the time of your processes. You can say, well, if I heat these urns that are coming out now, or pick this process to extract that information through this process, which this software vendor has developed, it would give us a better yield on our return in terms of extracting that particular mineral out of the ground. When people look at that, they say, well, what does it mean to the bottom line? It means better profits, it means that you can get more things out of the mines in terms of higher returns, and effectively you can start talking, say, which resources can I deploy to a more digitalized process? So digitalization is another factor where you say, instead of this being a manual process, how do I take that person or enable somebody that's coming into the mining area and give them better skills to actually progress and say, you can start using this by using this tool set, or giving them better areas to actually learn more things and learn more things in terms of IT and IT resources. The world is moving along that line. Everybody's got a smartphone these days. Everybody's got some sort of access to the internet. And so it gives people information to say, well, if I'm going to be learning that tool, what can I read about about mining and mining tools out there, and how does it make me a better person, and how does it put me in the forefront of actually saying, well, now I can get additional revenue for my family. I can progress my family from being where I've earned X amount per day now into another sector and actually get better earning ratio. I can potentially move into other areas of not only the mining industry but the IT industry in other sectors because I've developed the skill, which means now it gives other people also the chance to actually come up the ranks to be able to take that information and say, well, I've learned this from that particular person, therefore I can also progress and actually move into the other sector. Instead of just being the physical ground hard working, you can move into other areas. What does that mean? That means in the long run, people are starting to say, well, what tools, when tools become more automated, how can I use that tools and become more proficient and more technology ready in terms of using those tools? We know that a lot of manual tools, you click a button and things like that. But when those tools start moving into a more IT automated fashion, you start learning different capabilities, you start learning different things about those particular tools. And what does it mean to that person? It means it puts them into a better space to be able to say, I can now progress and move into other areas, move into other business areas. So if we look at all of this in terms of technology, we look at cloud services, the fundamental thing about cloud services is that it enables business to make, firstly, better decisions in terms of products and services that they can deliver. It means that business now is enabled to actually enable their staff to actually look at other areas of actually moving their staff from physical hard labor into less physical hard labor, thereby progressing people and moving them into other areas of business and saying, now you can start using this system and then you can start using that system, which means it helps people to move up in terms of the evolution of being able to say, I can now earn more money and make a better living for my family. And I think that's a key thing. If we can look at cloud services as a business enabler, as a people enabler, I think that is fundamental to the mining sector, which means no longer are you having mining strikes about just manual labor, but now it's moving into how do I make my life better, and looking at different things for people to say, how can we move you into that particular space? who are the people that are wanting to move into a particular space? Because as technology changes and tool sets change, things may become more automated from the perspective of 12, 15, 30 years from now. Mining will eventually move into a more automated fashion. This won't happen in the next 5 to 10 years even, because a lot of people will say, well, yes, we've got these tools, but these tools cost a lot of money. And so even those tools are there to be able to say move into an automated fashion and move people into a more up the value chain in terms of additional services that they can provide, better services and housing for people and things like that. I think that's a key thing around that. Okay, and cloud services is not a silver bullet for every solution. It is more a business enabler for the right solutions. And more vendors, software vendors, are moving to that space. But it's not always about automation. It's about people and helping people to move up the value chain.
Yes.
And to say, how do I learn a new skill to move me into the next area? And like I said, people have got smartphones these days. When you can start using those smartphones to actually send information up in and create there's different networks you can create in the mining sector.
Yes.
So even if you are underground, you can create what is known as a mesh network.
Yes.
In the mine itself, which means now all of a sudden information travels faster up, and that's also another form of cloud service. Okay. And it's about getting people to actually understand that it's not about me losing a manual job, but it's about me enabling myself to be a better position within the mining sector and moving me up the value chain. Because at some point in time, 10, 15 years down the line, things are going to be very different for the mining sector. It will. And I think we need to embrace that. And that's why I say it will still take probably another 30 years before you actually move out the complete manual labor sector. And the way to get the best is to say, what services can I provision today? How do I enable all of these services that comes to us from a mining in terms of software tools and evaluation tools of evaluating the actual minerals in the ground? Being able to pick up, there are tool sets out there today that can pick up what are the minerals in the ground with IT tools that can do that. And it will tell you, what is available, and evaluate what is actually in the ground. But a lot of those tools aren't being used because it's seen as a negative instead of actually seen as a positive. And the positive thing is, if I know where to go, then I can get more out of that ground.
Yes.
And instead of us plodding along in the direction where we're getting the least amount, let's go along the lines of getting the most. But by having tools that can actually pick up what is in the ground and evaluate it in a faster way. And then once you've got that, then you can send the mining troops and this labor into that particular area and then start extracting that out of there. Instead of, evaluating ground and saying, okay, we know that this is what the ground looked like 6 years ago, but we don't have that information because we have to do that now. Evaluation takes a lot of money because people charge an arm and a leg for that. But it's not like that anymore. With IT, and people still, mining sectors still think that you need to pay an arm and a leg for those services. But the tool sets that generate this information is a lot more proficient than they were 10, 15 years ago. And I've worked in other sectors in terms of chemical sectors and things like that. And the thing that I find is that people are still using the same methods to extract the information. And you can use different methods today. Yeah. And it makes a lot more sense, and it provides a lot more value. Yeah. And when you look at that and you say, we could have done this 5 years ago. Yes. We could have moved people into this particular space. and started gearing people towards that. Even if you take people that are coming out of the schools to go, by giving him, training him in that particular tool set to actually go into that particular area, it means a world of difference. Because people know what to do with their cell phones.
Yeah.
They download the new latest apps and they download the latest games and they play. But what if they were able to download these apps but also have mining apps on there?
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden they're using a mining app in the mine on their cell phones. And the company saying, we will reimburse you for using your cell phone within the mining sector. Yeah. It's productivity goes. It's a different way of looking at it. Yeah. People are being taught how to use the banking apps and on their smartphones and to order food online and to get the latest Pick and Pay app or the latest Checkers app or the latest this app and to get the latest specials and things like that. And people start using that and start getting value out of that. It can be the same for the mining industry. To start provisioning these things and applications through the cloud platform. And they say, what additional tools do I need to have and provision to the guys in the mine that will actually give them be able to help them upload the information faster. Because what happens now is the guys spend 6 to 8 hours down in the ground, and that information only comes up 6 to 8 hours later when that information could be fed a lot quicker.